What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Off the Top Rope, Off the Mic Sports Network. So Raw, really, from a in-ring perspective, fine show. The story that everybody's talking about is everybody's suspicions were confirmed. I didn't like how a lot of people were recklessly, without any factual information, speculating that this was the case, but it was confirmed that Naomi, the women's world champion, is with child. She is pregnant. She's going to have to go away. Turns out she's 7 weeks pregnant already. And so that means she went through all the evolution stuff, all that crazy night. And then obviously, SummerSlam, competing in that match before it was ultimately revealed. They found out, her and Jimmy Uso found out last week that she is in fact with child. So congratulations. And I had a whole video just, giving kind of like a retrospective of, Trinity, Fatu, the person, and also Naomi, the character, and what she's been able to do across her entire time in WWE through multiple stints. So above all else, I'm just over the moon for her. I'm over the moon for Jimmy. Great people. I obviously understand, Jimmy's had some, but he's been able to, persevere through a lot of that stuff. And obviously, Trinity, and Naomi has had to go through everything, leaving the company and, not having the easiest pathway back, coming back and then having to turn heel and have a major angle built around you, winning Money in the Bank, one of the greatest cash-ins, to get rewarded. It's unbelievable. But now we got to spin this thing forward, and we've got to, kind of, unfortunately, kind of leave Naomi. And this is probably, as anybody, the show must go on. So I've talked about this a lot. And even when this was up in the air, you kind of knew where this was going because there was a lot of conversation in the last week ever since Naomi was pulled from that championship match with Io Sky on last Monday's show. But the women's division on both Raw and SmackDown is kind of a mess right now. SmackDown just has nothing, and it's literally been Tiffany Stratton cycling through the same people. And they may be going back to Nia Jackson, maybe going back to Jade Cargill. That's a problem in itself. Raw, through no fault of its own, has kind of a catastrophe on their hands right now because Liv Morgan gets hurt in the build to Evolution. She was clearly being groomed to potentially be in the Women's World Championship picture. I don't know if she was necessarily going to potentially win the championship, but Naomi really was the Hail Mary option when Liv Morgan got hurt. And then, they needed something to take away the attention from, All in Texas. And, they needed to do something big. A lot of people thought that Naomi was going to cash on Tiffany Stratton. She went after the Women's World Champion. They needed a top heel over there. She filled that. And then a month after winning the championship, she's gone due to pregnancy. So this women's division, and they had a major match on the books for Clash in Paris with Stephanie Vicaire, one of the most over people in this division that a lot of people love. And it was a genuinely intriguing match with her and Naomi that they were already doing a really good job of building to it, with Naomi deliberately mispronouncing Stephanie's names. It was hilarious. And Naomi's character work was some of the best stuff that she had done. The evil laugh, all this stuff. It was working, man. So to lose her from a wrestling perspective is a massive loss. It's a massive loss. But let me be clear. This feels like a reward for Naomi. She got to win the championship. She got to win Money in the Bank. She has one of the great moments. She got to walk out with her dad at SummerSlam. As far as I'm concerned, the rest of this shit is gravy. You have a 1-month title reign and you get to relinquish it because you're having a baby. That's fucking awesome as far as I'm concerned. So go off and do whatever you want. For WWE now, they've got a lot to figure out. How do we sort this whole thing out with the Women's World Championship? Because, like I said, SmackDown Women's Division needs help. The Raw Women's Division is going to need help because their top heel right now is Becky Lynch, who's the Women's Intercontinental Champion. Let's call it what it is. You've got Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez, which could be interesting. And to me, if you're going to go the way that I think you're going to go, because Liv Morgan is going to come back at some point next year, I would expect around the Royal Rumble, and it would make a lot of sense potentially to build to something with her coming back as a conquering babyface and potentially, trying to pursue the Women's World Championship. So to me, That is the easiest story to tell out of this whole situation is Liv Morgan comes back. Roxanne Perez or Raquel Rodriguez is the champion. Whether they win that at Clash in Paris or they win that beating Stephanie Vicaire, or Stephanie Vicaire gets the title at some point, however we get to WrestleMania, to me, the logical steps that are being told right now tell me that Roxanne Perez or Raquel Rodriguez makes the most sense. A lot of people are going to advocate for Rhea Ripley to just get the championship back. I will tell you guys definitively, this is nothing against Rhea. I love Rhea to death. Rhea is one of the most insanely popular people in professional wrestling. The pops that she gets rival a lot of the dudes in the locker room. They're clearly building something with her and Io Sky. Whether it's a team, Rhea's got to beat Io before she gets to the championship. So I don't think Rhea's winning the championship immediately. Does Rhea potentially come into the equation as potentially a championship contender? Or is she going to potentially face Bianca Belair? Is that match happening? Because we've heard rumors that Bianca also wants to have children, much like Naomi. So is that clock ticking a little bit on that match? Because that's a dream match that they got to get out of the way. So Stephanie Vicaire is obviously in this equation because she's going to be in the discussion because she has a championship match that she won at Evolution in that Battle Royal. Becky Lynch is the women's Intercontinental Champion. She's going into a feud with Nikki Bella. I don't think Nikki Bella is beating Becky Lynch. Does Becky Lynch at some point, whenever she does drop that women's Intercontinental Championship, it also would have helped if you asked me, if Becky Lynch would have just lost to Lyra Valkyria at SummerSlam. But that didn't happen. Look, you can't predict the future. Like that's, it is what it is. With the way things have been rolled out. But, if you're looking in terms of how this is going to get sorted out, to me, like I said, Liv Morgan feels like, the direction for WrestleMania. And I don't know how long Naomi would have had the championship anyway. Stephanie Vicaire, for all we would have known, could have beaten her in Paris. Who knows? We'll never know the answer. It's going to be one of the great what ifs in professional wrestling. What would have happened if Naomi doesn't get pregnant? But, here we are. But to me, I don't think Rhea Ripley's going to be in the picture. I think Rhea Ripley and Io are going to be a team. They're going to go off and face the Kabuki Warriors. That's fine. Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez seem to be freed up because, they've already lost multiple times to Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss. So I think Roxanne, even at her young age, is ready to be a champion, and clearly they're building to something with Liv Morgan in mind. Raquel Rodriguez, I talked about this briefly on the post show. She has impressed the hell out of me. She has been amazing, really, ever since Kevin Nash gave her the advice of work bigger and work like you are a monster type heel. And ever since then, Raquel has been fucking impressive. I've always thought Raquel is better than people realize, but she's been fucking impressive the last couple of months in WWE. So I think if you want a dark horse potentially to win the championship, Raquel is right up there in that discussion too. They could go right back to Io Sky. And then that sort of sets the stage for Rhea Ripley to then beat Io Sky. But for those of you people who are clamoring for Rhea Ripley to immediately get the championship back, I think that's a horrible mistake. It's going to only heighten some of the negativity surrounding her, which I do not understand. To me, the story that needs to be told is Rhea needs to beat Io Sky before she goes and gets that Women's World Championship again. Because that's how this whole thing that's how this whole cycle of things started with the Women's World Championship. You guys remember how the year started. Rhea won the Women's World Championship on the Netflix debut January 6th. 2 months later, the Monday Night Raw after Elimination Chamber loses to Io Sky. Then obviously he's had multiple matches with Io Sky where she has come up short. That's been the story. That's been the narrative that's been spun by WWE. If they just have Rhea win the championship, no matter how it is, you're going to want Rhea to beat Io, specifically in a one-on-one setting. That's what this is building to. So whether Io is the champion and Rhea has to go out and beat her, which to me, I don't think that's happening, they've got to figure it out. But the other thing that needs to be discussed here, they need to call up some NXT people. They need to call up some NXT people like yesterday. Jordan Grace and Blake Monroe are going to face each other at Heatwave this weekend. I don't think Blake Monroe's getting called up tomorrow, but they need her. They need her right now. But she's going to get groomed to be in the NXT women's title picture. You know, JC Jane and you know, Fatal Influence. Like Jordan Grace could be really utilized on the main roster as a potential type big time acquisition for them. I've heard the main roster like Sol Ruka, but she's got to sort some stuff out with Zarya, her tag team partner. So does that get moved to the main roster and they don't sort that out in NXT? But again, this Naomi thing, it's not even really her. Like I said, of course it's not her fault. But and the Liv Morgan thing, it's really bad luck from a creative sense for WWE, where it's like, okay, your top two heels in the women's division on Raw, injured, pregnant. And Becky Lynch is still the women's Intercontinental Champion. She could have been very well utilized in the Women's World Championship picture, but, you know, a lot of people probably would have been mad about that and called her Becky Hogan. So maybe she's better served actually being in the Intercontinental Championship picture. But this is going to be fascinating to see how they sort this thing out, man, because this is like I said, SmackDown's a mess for a different reason because they haven't been able to book shit on that show. Raw is a mess because of just a series of unfortunate circumstances that have been dealt to the creative team and been dealt to Triple H. But they got to figure it out, man. Again, let me be clear. I am over the moon happy for Naomi, and I'm over the moon happy. It sucks from a wrestling perspective because of how great and how big of an asset she was to this roster and how she fit like a glove coming over from SmackDown when she really wasn't even involved in this. And to me, could have had a lot of runway on this championship run, but it gets cut short. This is life. You know, life doesn't plan things for your career. And as I said, to me, I'm looking at this as like a present, a giant gift for Naomi for how much she has given to this business and how much she has given in this specific year. She's earned this. She's absolutely earned this. And having a 1-month title reign and having to leave because you're pregnant, I think you should be absolutely fucking proud of that. It's not a death sentence whatsoever. So, yeah. Anyway, this is going to be really interesting to see how this thing gets sorted out. So, anyway, I'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.